late President Muhammadu Buhari's tenure was marked by significant diplomatic efforts that shaped Nigeria's relationships with the global community, from strengthening ties with the traditional allies to a new partnership. His administration's diplomatic engagements had far-reaching implications for the country's economy, security, and international reputation. How has it been the key diplomatic initiatives and achievements of President Buhari's administration, including his interactions with world leaders, participation in international summits, and efforts to promote African unity and cooperation? This and more will form the basis of our conversation tonight on Nigeria Today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ikaria Clinton. Now, with me in the studio for this conversation is Ambassador Dauda Danladi. He's the former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. It's a pleasure to have you in Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much.
Also with us for this conversation is Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omali. He's an international relations analyst. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'll start with you, Doc. You know, from your own perspective, what would you say was the overall foreign policy posture of the Buhari's administration?
Well, our late President Muhammadu Buhari, may he so rest in peace, he had a very dynamic foreign policy. Dynamic foreign policy in the sense that when he came into power, he has three agendas that he wanted to pursue: economic development, fight against insurgency, and anti-corruption war. And among those three key objectives, he tried in the best possible way that he could in addressing these three key objectives that he has outlined. In terms of economic development, a lot of reforms were put in place, though a lot needs still to be done. But he traveled far and wide to draw attention to the economic problems of the country. Some of the notable achievements from his diplomatic shuttle that he traversed the globe are there for a lot of us to applaud. Fundamentally, we maintain very cordial relationship with the U.S. That is one of our strategic trade partners, especially one of the largest importer of our crude oil. He through his visit to the United States, he was able to consolidate that. In terms of foreign direct investment, a lot of investment came into the country during the period that our late president was in government. Some of the notable investments that came in are the agreements with China to modernize some parts of our railway, especially the Kaduna rail track and so on. So in terms of economic development, he tried. Domestically also, because domestic policy also affects foreign policy. The reforms he introduced in terms of treasury single accounts and other reforms that he put in place. In terms of anti-corruption, we also witnessed the landmark agreement or landmark discussion he had with the US and the UK, where some looted funds were repatriated back. The UK government brought in about $144 million proceeds of corruption, and then also the Abacha loot and so on. So many of these initiatives were the result of his diplomatic shuttle. In terms of insurgency, which is still with us up till the current time, a lot was also done. He was able to secure a lot of foreign interventions, especially for the internally displaced people in the Northeast and so on. So I would say that he did a lot But though a lot still need to be done, but
Okay,
he tried his best.
I'll have to stop you here, Doc.
Yeah.
I know you have quite a lot of information there. Let Ambassador now tell us, from his own perspective, and what were his key achievements, in relation to his diplomatic efforts with the international partners.
Well, I will again start by praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant our late iconic president the Jannah Firdaus. I would quickly like to take a cursory look at both sides of his tenure as military head of state and as a civilian president when he transmuted. Now, remember in 1983, between 1983 to 1985, he was the military head of state. When he took over the reins of government at the time, the Nigeria was facing very serious economic crisis. There was shortages in our foreign exchange. Nigeria does not have the capacity, really, at the time, to support imports for more than 3 months. So when he came in, he focused very strongly on economic diplomacy. And then, secondly, was the issue of regional integration. Because at the time, our borders, we were having disputes with our neighbors. So he focused on regional integration and, of course, the war against indiscipline. Now, on economic diplomacy, he was able to introduce a fiscal discipline and curtailing import of goods from Europe. He promoted import substitution industries, and at the same time, this luxurious consumption of goods by Nigerians, he introduced austere measures at that time. And one of the significant...
The one we refer to as austerity measures.
Austerity measures, yes. And one of the significant milestones actually was the counter trade. At that time, Nigeria was using its oil as a barter to bring in essential goods. I don't know where you were in 1983 to 1984, but then there were within the country, we had all these major supply companies supplying essential goods and services. Why? Because there was the art of foreign exchange to import essential goods and services. Now, that fiscal discipline was occasioned by the frivolous import license. In those days, we had this import license. And unfortunately, politicians were using these import licenses without fiscal responsibility, if I may use that word. So that, to some large extent, shaped really his foreign policy. Going forward, the war against indiscipline, as has been said by Dr. Umali, you see, domestic policies, really, the domestic philosophy, the domestic psychic, the issue of geopolitical position of a country goes to shape a country's foreign policy. So at that time, the issue of war against indiscipline, what was it? It was war against corruption. It was war against lack of transparency in the conduct of government business. Again, the indoctrination of nationalism and patriotism. People have to queue. We have to learn to queue in banks, in filling stations, okay, and in hospitals. So that was the application of nationalism and patriotism, the war against indiscipline. Why? It will reflect and boost the image of Nigeria at the international level. Going forward, he rejected the IMF conditionalities at that time. He rejected the IMF conditionalities, rejected the deregulation of the economy at that time. And of course, some held him at that time as a hero, that he is protecting the sovereignty of Nigeria, while some economists said it was a lost opportunity. Again, at the regional level, continental Africa being the centerpiece, the Afro centerpiece of our foreign policy, remember, he contributed in the emancipation of Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, South Africa. He supported SWAPO, the liberation movement in Southern Africa. And that's why when this issue of came up between Nigeria and South Africa, we were wondering. Now, quickly, fast forward to when he was...
When he was civilian president.
I think the high point of his administration, foreign policy, was really the issue of fighting corruption. He has succeeded to a large extent. As has been said by Dr. O'Malley, he was able to rejig our relationship with the UK, the USA, Britain, France, Switzerland, all right? And in that process, he was able to gather some support from these Western countries to establish what is called the Global Forum for Asset Recovery, all right? And that was the first time in the history of Africa's relations with the international community that we had that. What does that mean? It means all looted funds, not only from Nigeria, will be fast-tracked, and African countries are still benefiting from that single foreign report.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that rundown of our history. So, Dr. Mali, talk to us. How success? Haven't heard what Ambassador has to say about his efforts. His some of his diplomatic engagements, and how he was able to achieve quite a lot for the country. How, in your opinion, how successful was his efforts in trying to reduce the dependence on oil and diversify the economy?
Yes, within the 8-year span of his administration from 2015 to 2023, a lot of efforts were put in the area of diversification of the economy. A lot of efforts were put into gas, into especially tapping our gas resources. And because of that, the agreement between Nigeria and Morocco, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022, when it started, a lot of pressure was on Nigeria to provide alternative supply of gas to Europe. And President Muhammadu Buhari took that initiative so as to leverage on that to improve our supply of gas through the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline. Okay, so also the president also leveraged on agriculture. He also did a lot in terms of livestock, in terms of agricultural provision of fertilizer to farmers, and also incentive to enhance our agricultural production. And in his trip abroad and to several other countries, the issue of diversifying the economy was very key. And because of that, no country, one view that he held on strictly was that no country can transform without industrialization. And he ensured that in most of the foreign trips that he made, he ensured that foreign investors were wooed to Nigeria. I recollect that when he went to Russia to visit Russia, he came back with an agreement for the resuscitation of the Ajokuta steel mill, which was very, very instructive. We cannot develop our automobile sector and several sector without a strong steel development. And in answer to your question, that is one of the key areas that he looked into. Though the Ajokuta steel mill has not produced, but after a very long period of being moribund, the Buhari administration impressed it on the Russians to see a way of revitalizing the Ajokuta steel, and that was done. So he tried a lot in diversifying the economy. He did a lot in terms of industrialization. He did a lot in terms of agriculture. He did a lot in terms of gas. Even in petroleum refinery, a lot was done to resuscitate our moribund refineries. But for one reason or the other, the refineries didn't come on stream, but a lot of efforts were put into it.
Thank you very much. We'll take a short break now. The conversation will continue after the break. Don't go away.
Implementation of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different? We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that our questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that we are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today. Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we are looking at the Buhari's administration, the late Buhari's administration diplomatic engagement and an impact it had on Nigeria's development. And of course, I have two gentlemen here with me in the studio for this conversation. Now, Ambassador, of course, having heard what Dr. O'Malley had to say about, some developmental strides, would, give kudos to the late president for. We also want to hear from your own perspective. What would you say stood out for you in his, his style of? Will I say the diplomatic engagement he was involved in, and how it had impacted on the country?
Well, I think he was able to rebrand Nigeria. All right, as has been mentioned by most of those legacies, iconic legacies that he has left behind, has been mentioned by Dr. O'Malley. But if I can just re-emphasize, you see, when you talk about diversification of the economy, the Anko Borrower scheme, this is a scheme that touched the lives of millions of farmers across the country, including state governments. All participated in the Anko Borrower scheme. Billions were released. Farmers had access to credit for the first time. You see, our banks, as it is today, it's very difficult for an ordinary person to go to the bank, approach the bank, and secure a loan, especially agricultural loan. Since it is something that has some risk involved, the interest rate by the commercial banks, and the collateral required by the commercial bank would be very difficult for a man in a village, a farmer in a village, a woman in a village to access credits. So the Anko Borrower was one major achievement of the late president's administration. Now, going forward, solid minerals was also another area that he placed a lot of emphasis, and the issue of digital economy, which this particular government has taken it to another level, is a milestone achievement that will provide thousands of our youth with various opportunities in the digital economy. Now, the golden crown really was the recovery of over 14 or 17 local government areas that were under the total control of Boko Haram. Remember, when he came in, not only the Northeast region, we had the Northwest, banditry and cattle rustlers, something in the North Central, the agitation, separatist agitation in the Southeast, and of course, the Fulani heads crisis in the Southwest. So, it was a Pandora box of security challenges, and he was able to equip the armed forces. I remember when I was in Pakistan, just before he took power, we were able to get about 21 trips of armored ammunition for the Nigerian armed forces of C-130, 21 trips. And when he came in, he cashed in and leveraged on that, And he was able to immediately acquire about 12 Super Mushak trainer aircraft from the Nigerian Air Force.
Okay.
So that really has gone, along with the strengthening of the multinational task force, which he rallied our neighboring countries, funded that multinational task force. They were able to clear. So I think that's the high point of his administration.
Okay, having said that, would you, in all of his efforts, in terms of is diplomatic engagements, talking about foreign policy, would you say that the president succeeded in repositioning Nigeria as a continental leader?
Yes, I think so. And I think in a resume, if you can define his foreign policy, is concentric cycle diplomacy. And I believe Dr. Omale knows what I'm talking about. One is the interest, Nigeria's interest first. Second, our neighbors. And third, the larger community. And I think he has been able to stamp his mark there, because when he was designated by the UN as a champion of corruption in Africa, I think that has boosted the image of Nigeria. All right? The second designation was the ECOWAS heads of government designated him as COVID-19 champion. Remember, there were a series of cascading economic and social dislocation as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most countries went into recession, but his government was able to stabilize the economy. He injected a lot of intervention funds to stabilize the economy. So I think, in summary, these achievements are not the least, but they are major achievements that he has recorded.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Dr. Omale, looking, will I say, in retrospect, how would you summarize the late President Buhari's, legacy in terms of diplomacy?
Well, he consolidated Nigerian foreign policy that had been put on ground by the founding fathers of Nigeria. He sustained and maintained the tempo. Nigeria under Buhari was non-aligned because he was able to relate with all the global powers equally. He was relating with China very well. He was relating with the US. He was relating with Russia. He was relating with virtually everybody. So he sustained Nigeria's non-aligned position. He also believed in multilateral diplomacy. Nigeria participated in successfully in virtually all the multilateral engagements, both at the United Nations, both at the African Union, both at ECOWAS, and all the other multilateral institutions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omale, an international relations analyst. Thank you so much. I really wish we had more time to talk more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The Ambassador Dawood Danladi, former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your thoughts with us. And thank you for being part of the program. I'm Eukaria Clinton. Goodbye.